the New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Hey folks, greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Spain, and today we have Ben Moore joining us. Good to have you back in the studio, Ben. How are you?
You're good, thank you. Yeah, nice to be back.
Yeah. Maybe you could fill listeners in on where you fit into this big wild world of tech and journalism.
Yeah, sure thing.
Time.
I have been, I was until recently a tech journalist with a mainstream media outlet. And over the last few months, I've been making it out on my own. I'm trying to do more independent tech journalism, looking at the intersection of tech and culture and society. Things have been a little bit slow lately because I've just welcomed my second child into the world. So
that's awesome.
Thank you so much. But we're trying to get back into it now. So hopefully we should have a few more pieces coming down in the pipeline. But yeah, still trying to keep my finger on that kind of the tech journalism pulse as I do other work to bring in, pay the bills. So.
Yeah. Oh, really good to catch up, have a chance to chat through some of what's happening in the tech world. Of course, a big thank you to our show partners, 1NZ, 2 Degrees, Spark, HP, Workday, and Gorilla Technology. Well, a fair bit going on at the moment, and certainly within New Zealand as well as things happening on a global basis. One of those is that we've had an announcement from Associate Justice Minister Nicole McKee that crypto ATMs are going to be banned in New Zealand. So we don't know exactly when that's going to be enacted, but that is the word that's come down, and the reasons being to do with sort of money laundering and criminal types of activities. Although it has been suggested that possibly if this does go through, which seems pretty much foregone conclusion. So it's probably really about timing. That there is a potential that the government would have to step up and maybe compensate those who have installed these crypto ATMs around the country. So I guess there's some mechanisms through which they look at these things when government enacts something that leaves particular parties out of pocket. Then there are certain scenarios under which they have to make good, or at least consider making things right and fair. I'm curious what you think about this, Ben.
It's an interesting one. Like the first time I remember hearing about a crypto ATM was in 2015. A podcast called Radio Lab did a piece where a woman was hit by some ransomware and they ordered her to pay, or they demanded that she paid using a Bitcoin ATM. And at the time, there was a single one in America and New York or something like that. So they're not brand new, but they also have a legacy of being associated with criminal activity for a really long time. And I was reading around some of the commentary, and the massive company that owns a lot of these ATMs was saying actually what the government should be doing is challenging the issues at hand around money laundering and doing a better job at tracking wallets and these kinds of things. But that goes back to that age-old question of the give and take of anonymity around cryptocurrency. So I can kind of understand why you would want to maybe divorce cash and crypto because the two kind of criminal enterprise ways of making transactions. But I also do kind of understand the sense that actually maybe we should be thinking harder about how to manage crypto, introducing more legislation. But I'm not an expert in that. So in terms of do I agree with it? Kind of, I guess. They can be abused so easily.
Yeah, I think these things are quite nuanced because there do tend to be things on both from both sides of, hey, this is good from this perspective, but it's bad from that perspective.
Yeah.
And one of my concerns that I discussed in an interview this morning was, what does this do for those who legitimately, do want to convert some cash into crypto or vice versa? Because I have, I haven't been on any of these forums for quite some time, because I've, I'm not super comfortable with crypto as something to hold, because I don't want to be my own bank.
Yeah.
I don't want the security aspect of that, right?
Yeah.
Someone turning up at your front door with an iron bar sort of thing, which is unfortunately, becoming more of a reality. So. Just put that out there for clarity. But I have in the past, looked through, well, how would you then get rid of your crypto and convert it into local currency? And around Reddit and varying online forums and so on, people arrange to meet, and you will do a trade and so on. But of course, that's not necessarily the safest of endeavors.
Yeah.
And so, someone might turn up and might well take the cash that you're bringing, but might not give you any crypto.
Well, this is the question as
yeah.
well, is people would ask, why can you not take that cash, deposit it into a bank account, and then use funds in that bank account with like an easy crypto or whatever other exchange to purchase cryptocurrency that's traceable. So the question is if you're not willing to do that with that cash, why is that? And I guess that there's a philosophical argument there about, like, should people have a say what I do with my money? That's the point of cash, is that I can kind of do what I want with it, without having to be followed around everywhere. And
having a digital footprint of every single transaction you've done. Yeah, there's that element to it. I also recall who, I think this was with Easy Crypto, who have now been sold to an Australian company, but New Zealand company Easy Crypto. If you wanted to withdraw, you wanted to convert your crypto back into NZD, there were limits on the amount that you could do, and it was based on, I think, how much you had bought through Easy Crypto.
Right.
So let's say you'd, I don't know, bought some crypto in USD at some stage, some other way that was on your wallet. Maybe you just bought off a now defunct exchange, or whatever the mechanism was. Maybe you lived in another country, you moved to New Zealand, then you want to cash out, and you go to, I'm with Easy Crypto, let's cash out, and they're like, well, you either didn't buy any off us, or you've only bought a certain amount, so sorry, you can't, you can't actually convert. Now, I don't know if that's exactly still the case, but there are challenges, and so it's sort of weighing those things up as to whether you like it or don't like it. I think there'll be some listeners who probably are disappointed about this approach, but I imagine probably lots and lots of people who aren't going to give a rat's either way, right? Because it doesn't impact them. So it is one of those things where some people will be impacted from a mix of different reasons.
The people who care are going to care a lot, but most people aren't going to care. I think.
But I think when we look at the issues from a crime perspective, though these are genuine issues, and as a country we do have to be thinking around how do you balance these things up. And I remember when in the past we've delved into things like whether governments should have backdoors into encryption and so on. It's like all of these things have got parallels or similarities and impacts in varying ways. Now, some of them much bigger issues. But as we've moved to say encrypted messaging from text messages, which super easy for a court to put an order in place and a telco to listen in on all your messages, but you move to encrypted and it's different. And I guess there's elements of that in the crypto world some which are going to impact
Mm.
legitimate citizens, and others which are going to have more of an impact on the same thing can have an impact on both legitimate citizens and the criminals. So how do you ride that line? Easier said than done.
That's
so,
the decision that every country has to make for themselves at the end of the day.
Yeah, and we're doing this following in the footsteps of other countries, UK, Singapore, that have gone through this sort of thing before.
And one country just said that, we're going to put a limit on how much you can withdraw a day from a certain account or ATM, or I don't know how they particularly work that, when you can have multiple wallets and shift crypto between wallets quite easily. So I'm not sure how they would even manage that.
Yeah, I think there are genuine challenges. Okay, now on to another New Zealand story. Is the government have unveiled their national strategy for AI adoption. Now, both of us are sort of have been following this. I think if we're 100% honest, we will admit that we haven't read every detail and every page of it. To me, it was something that kind of, I don't know, it wasn't particularly exciting and an engaging document. But I guess what it highlighted to me is, hey, New Zealand at a government level are paying attention to some matters of from a technology perspective, and of course we've seen things at a local government perspective as well, with this Auckland Council initiative on the tech front as well, with their panel. So there's all sorts of things going on, and look, it's good to see governments pay attention to technology and the opportunities that are there, and AI I think is really, really important that we are. But it I don't know. It doesn't seem as though really the depth of thought has gone in there. I saw some people highlighting, well, the document says on it was AI or AI was used in producing it. That sort of statement, I don't see that as a bad statement, but actually when you read it, you wonder, well, how much of it was AI generated and didn't actually involve, people. And so, look, I'm kind of curious around, well, how would you get this right? I don't see a way that these sorts of things, you ever please any or everyone. You usually end up being able to be very, very critical. But yeah, I mean, I'm probably in the camp that thinks that they could have done better here, to be fair.
I think so. I think what I would have liked to see was something saying, we're going to, here's like some specific things that we are going to figure out if they work. We're going to try these things, and these are the returns that we're going to hopefully get on these applications. And this is how we're going to work with public service employees to develop and test out these things. A little bit more, I guess, mature in terms of the...
Well, interesting. They do have something for the public service that probably was a better resource. And so, they've put something together that's kind of,
I mean, that's just the same thing in a graph form.
Yeah, but I think I don't know. It seemed to me that was something that's easier to consume, and was making it easy for the government entities to be able to get on board, have a quick look, understand what the key considerations need to be. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I think if you're going to talk about a strategy, I just think that you can have the broad sweeping stuff that they've got in there. Maybe I would have dialed down the kind of 2 year ago hype. Some of the wording in there is a little bit over the top, but also just say, like, this is an example of a really specific thing that we are going to do. We're going to introduce some AI support for call centers that we've seen enterprise use and successfully. And these are the kind of guardrails we're going to have around that. And here's how we're going to make sure it works. We're going to have senior people who can just those kinds of things that make me, as somebody who knows a little bit about the technology, feel like they're taking the right steps. They're thinking about it in the right way, and they're not just kind of running into something with an idea. That they have a plan, a strategy.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the things they have made the point of is they don't want to be sort of regulating and getting in the way of people leveraging AI. And I think there's an element of validity to that, but I think all of us probably have concerns around technology being used in inappropriate sort of ways, and actually working out how and where guardrails should be is going to be something that's important. And I would think anyway that that does need to be an element. You don't just say, well, there's no guardrails, but that's extremely hard to do. And I think that's part of it, is if you go too far down the trying to put guardrails in place, you potentially then can't use you benefit from the technology very well. So not an easy one, but hey, I think it's encouraging they're at least doing something.
Yeah.
And this is one area I think as a country we need to be encouraging the adoption and appropriate leverage of AI. One of the other areas which we haven't really delved into, but I'm sure you've been following, is our aerospace sector, and that's a whole opportunity for New Zealand, more from a direct kind of revenue perspective and so on. Lots of opportunities across science and technology for New Zealand, but it's been interesting just to watch how Rocket Lab especially has been scaling up. And we know that there are hundreds of companies literally in the aerospace sector in New Zealand. Most of them we've never heard of, or we don't know that they're an aerospace company. Rocket Lab seem to be getting a lot of attention globally. I think they've had 2 days within the past week where they've gone up around, their share price has gone up around 10%. So they're now about 10 times what they were.
I think the
around
politics,
a year ago, right?
The politics in the States has helped a little bit, where there was some trepidation about, is Rocket Lab going to be nudged out with golf course handshakes between certain parties, but
not anymore.
Not anymore. Certainly, that played out in a way that wasn't probably beneficial. So it's been interesting to see that jump in Rocket Lab, especially as they're nearing the completion of that Neutron rocket, which it's a huge endeavor from a New Zealand company to build something of that scale, and pretty interesting how that's going to pay off for them in the long run.
Yeah. Oh, look, it's I think very, very exciting period for New Zealand, that we've got such innovation taking place, and that New Zealand is still absolutely key to it. And Peter Beck, I think, is largely Auckland based. I know he's got to spend a lot of time away, but and a very large percentage of what Rocket Lab do is right here in New Zealand. And there's obviously other things happening all around the country, and places for launch outside Christchurch and the like. So lots of good things going on, but just thought it's worth mentioning. We get AI is exciting and so on, but actually we're already doing very, very well on the global stage when it comes to aerospace. So that's another area we want to keep doubling down on.
Yeah, and then you get the great spin outs from all of that great engineering, like Halter, who just my dad was over from Australia recently, and he was saying they've got these collars and these in the paddocks, and just he lives in Australia, tells the cows where to go and when to feed, and Winter Milk, and I was like, oh yeah, that's a New Zealand company. That's really cool. So yeah, really impressive stuff that happens when you have that innovation ecosystem start to really broaden out.
Yeah. And I mean, Holter's a great one to mention because they've just recently done a Series D fundraising round, and they raised 165 million, which gives them a valuation for the business of 1.65 billion.
Yeah,
which is absolutely phenomenal. So it's really exciting to see the momentum in some of these businesses and some of the newer ones that are coming through, and the flow on for those is largely absolutely brilliant for this country, right?
Yeah. If we can have those really good companies that are just dominating overseas, especially the crunchy stuff that has a lot of value, it's always great to see.
Yeah. Now, one that sort of popped up in some news is issues around lithium batteries and causing issues when it comes to our rubbish removal in New Zealand, and they've been doing testing with, well, how do they deal with this type of fire when it takes place, say on a rubbish truck, or when it gets to the tip, and apparently they've had 14 fires recorded so far, coming from Auckland Council, who so they're setting some fires to actually get a handle on how to deal with this stuff. The thing that I thought probably most helpful, because we all know that you shouldn't be throwing your batteries in the bin. Well, we should know that they shouldn't be going in the bin and actually going in with your general rubbish. However, I guess there's a bunch of people that don't, or are getting stuck with well, what else do I do with it?
Yeah.
So there is some info online and where you can get those. So just Google it or what have you. But when I was looking at the list earlier, I saw there's a bunch of Bunnings and Mitre 10 stores on the list, which are all over the place. So those would be some easy options. Not every Bunnings and Mitre 10 will take your dirty old batteries, but some of them will. We used to have a mechanic very close to our Gorilla Technology office, where whether it was UPS batteries or whatnot, it was very easy just to go and drop them off there. They would collect them and they would get recycled, and that was very, very convenient. But in most cases, something like a local spot where you can go is good to know, and take them with you when you're heading in that direction. So
also being aware that like lithium batteries are in so many things these days, so many more than you would expect, and so you might think that you're just chucking some old thing into the rubbish, but if it's got a port that you're charging it through, then you need to take a moment and think about whether that belongs in the rubbish. Anything with a battery, anything that charges, you need to actually be considering how you're getting rid of it. I know HP has been running some e-waste collection programs, and with collection points, and I think the warehouse had some at some point as well. They are out there. It just takes a little bit of effort to find them, but it's worth it, because you don't want to set fire to any more garbage trucks, because we need those. And it all just gets passed on, right? So if a garbage truck goes up, then it's going to end up in the rates, and by the sounds of it, they're having quite a few of these sorts of issues. And on the weekend, I was swapping out. I realised some of my AirTags were a bit low on battery, and some of them probably not super clearly labelled, or they'd moved around from one thing to another. So I was looking for one, and I fortunately they're reasonably easy to find, as long as the battery hasn't run out. So you got to get to them before they run out. So I switched over a battery, but of course has left me with a pile of batteries to get rid of. So it
was very timely for me to be reminded that we do have some good options for getting rid of our batteries. Now, other thing on the New Zealand front, NZ Police have had a bit of a review on their security, which is an important thing to be doing.
Their network security.
Yes, yeah. And it's raised, I guess, a number of issues. And this kind of, I guess, comes, following some dramas at NZ Police, where their second in command, Jevon McSkimming, basically exited police under circumstances where understand he'd been accessing inappropriate content and so on. And so this report has come, following that. Bastion Security have done that, and I guess we've got a somewhat sanitized version of that's been made public. But highlighting sort of weak controls, issues with unmanaged devices, and a lack of monitoring in certain areas. And I think it's really good that they've done this. It highlighted that they stopped a chunk of the monitoring that they had been doing going back about 5 years ago. But when I think about police, most of us will probably recall having heard about a news story where someone, whether they were gang affiliated or whether they were bribed, whatever the scenario was on police systems and accessing data that they shouldn't have been accessing. And so having good mechanisms in place that control who can access what, and then when somebody does access something, that there's good kind of audit logs, and that then something is done with that data. So it's not just logged somewhere and never seen, but that these things are brought to the fore is important, and that all the typical appropriate sort of security mechanisms are put in place.
Yeah, nobody likes the controls that are put on their work laptop, right? Like nobody enjoys those, but they are necessary. And I don't think it's controversial to say that if you're part of the police force, probably more necessary than, say, if you're working for, I don't know, an insurance company or something like that. And so I think it's great that they've jumped in there and used this as an opportunity to review their systems and do a bit of a rethink around how they actually go about locking down some of those systems. Because some of the issues with shadow IT as well, stuff getting on the network that's maybe not supposed to be there, or accessing systems on other devices and that kind of stuff. It's, I think, a good thing that we are reminding our institutions that they too need to be a little bit careful about their cybersecurity.
Yeah, and look, I think these things are taken from discussions I've had with varying people. Most of these things are taken pretty seriously within police, but for any organisation, there's a journey to get from where you are now to a better place. Yeah. And there's usually, and I don't think I've ever come across any organisation you can say, oh, they're perfect, and there's nothing else that they that they need to do. And of course, it is a balancing act, but good to see the transparency that they've shared at least a sort of a sanitized or a high level version of this report, and that they're being held to account to some degree publicly. So good stuff. And look, I think the more that we delve in and we talk about these things and we discuss the ins and outs and the challenges and the two sides to it, as you say, nobody likes to have a lot of constraints on their ability to operate and to use their technology. But there are some pretty important aspects to that.
Also, a really good lesson to people to not look at objectionable content on their work devices. I think it's unfortunate people need a reminder of that, but a timely reminder for everybody out there.
Yeah, or on any device. But anyway, we're now back to onto the international topic. So. Yeah, it was quite fascinated hearing about this robot that's been doing a gallbladder surgery.
Mm.
This is a robot developed by Johns Hopkins University, fully autonomous, so trained basically on watching other videos of surgeries. Now, some of the reports on this probably didn't give a full clarity to what was going on. From what I was reading initially, it sounded like an operation had taken place on a human. But when I looked into it, that was not the
It was on a pig,
full
wasn't it?
story. I think it was a pig.
Mm.
Possibly, can't even remember whether it was alive or I think it might have been a dead pig or something. So a little bit more detail, but the fact that it did this, very intricate operation, and from the things I'm reading, very, very skillfully, gives us a little bit of a taste of some of what's likely to be coming down the track in the future. And having had a close relative who was just in Auckland Hospital at the moment, had been through a 7.5-hour heart surgery, and knowing all of the challenges with cost effectively running a healthcare system, I can see how we might get some benefits from this technology iterating. However, there's got to be a I guess a level of caution at the pace in which we jump in with these things. And when self-driving cars are doing crazy stuff, if you've got a robot, doing surgery, you need a very high level of confidence before we unleash and say, "Oh, yep, over to you, robot. I'll come back in a few hours to check on the results." I am I guess probably upbeat on. I mean, there's probably a number of aspects here, but one obviously is that that skill set that might not exist, particularly in certain locations where you've got a smaller population. Then hey, you're not necessarily going to have the skill set, and we address that partly with remotely controlled robotics, where there's a surgeon doing something remotely at the moment. But I think there's probably a pace aspect to this sort of thing as well, where a robot doesn't get the same sort of human fatigue, loss of concentration, and so on. So there will be probably multiple positives to this. Probably a surgeon, a skilled surgeon, will be able to share some downsides, but it looks like there's a lot of positive in there from my thinking.
A lot of potential, and I think what was interesting was that it had a natural language layer as well, where the doctor or the surgeon could say, there's this issue, so be thoughtful about this. Well, not thoughtful, I guess is the wrong turn of phrase, but be aware of this issue, or focus over here. That's that.
Sentient.
And so that's an interesting addition as well, and how that will go. But I like the idea that the robot can go, okay, I'm going to do this next step now. This is what it will look like. What do you think, surgeon? And the surgeon can go, yes, that sounds good, or let's adjust it this way. And then there's that human in the loop, as we like to say, confirming each step that is being done in the right way. I think, because sure, making a slice in something, that is a job that you can rely on a robot to do. It can make a straight line with a scalpel, but in terms of knowing exactly the right time and the right way to make sure that nothing else is in the way, and just having that dexterity of mind, that's still a human job, and we still need humans definitely for that.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating time as we see these things evolve. Now, Nvidia had a $4 trillion US market cap. The first company to do so. Quite an incredible number when you think about
big
it,
number,
and just how far they've come. I mean, they're sitting at a $164 USD price, whereas if we go back 5 years, they were 10. It was a $10 stock, and you go back a little bit further, and it was not a lot back, like less than 10 years ago it was under $1. And so what a meteoric rise
extraordinary
for Nvidia, and the fact that they've got in there to that $4 trillion market cap or valuation.
I went to the
rest.
The Nvidia conference in 2018 in San Jose, and they were going, "We've got this new thing called RTX. Look at the way we can do light now. Isn't that exciting?" And to think back then, like if I had looked forward 2 or 3 years, what Nvidia would have become. The AI stuff was very, very nascent in those days, and they were kind of talking about it a little bit, but to see. Yeah, it's truly incredible how much that company has benefited from this huge shift in what we want our infrastructure to do.
Oh yeah, it's I think not many people would have picked how well Nvidia was going to do, but hey.
It's
well done to those who invested at an appropriate time to have come out on top. I did see some numbers around. Think of stocks and so on. Rocket Lab saying we were up to something like 32,000 investors in New Zealand.
Wow.
So it's encouraging to know that it's not just their staff and founders, but that's a sizable number of Kiwis that have invested in what is a US listed stock, and no doubt will have done very well. And there'll be we'll have many millionaires in New Zealand that have probably become have done well, or have made their millions off the back of Rocket Lab, whether it's that they were staff, they were there at the right time, and their staff allocation or access to buy shares has worked out well, but also a lot of people jumping on board and buying the stock.
Yeah, it is interesting to see the New Zealand investors kind of pride around the Rocket Lab, and you look on some of the subreddit like Queen Street Bets or something like that, and you can see that they really love the Rocket Lab. It's kind of got a meme quality to it, but not in a meme stock kind of way, but just in a kind of national pride in that that sense. So it's great to see that that kind of Kiwi company doing well on something like the Nasdaq.
Yeah. Well, I think keep it rolling. We need more of that. In fact, it was I think Peter Beck speaking at Parliament, who was talking around where the space sector is going. I think it's maybe a $1.8 trillion industry, and I don't want to say too much around these numbers because I'll get the years and the dates and the prediction wrong. But moving and not too far off to something like 2.3 trillion. And he made a comment about, hey, wouldn't it be great, or shouldn't we set the ambition for New Zealand to get a tenth of that industry? Now, I think there was a lot of laughter or naysayers in the room, and it sounds preposterous in many ways, but from other perspectives, it's like, well, how could we do that? What would it take for New Zealand to position ourselves to take a big slice? And I guess one way you could look at it is, well, if there end up being, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 really big companies, in space. One of those at the moment near the top is likely to be Rocket Lab.
Yeah.
And so that industry turns into a, $2 or $3 trillion industry. Well, who knows what slice of that New Zealand could get? But I like his thinking that we should lift our ambitions.
And you talk to Peter Beck, he's very quick to remind you that launch is just one aspect of what they do and what the industry is. There is a lot of tech and engineering and deep detail in what the space industry actually consists of. There's so much more than just shooting cool things and just, rockets into space. Sensors and propulsion. We've got a great company down in Christchurch working on propulsion. The name I can't remember, unfortunately, but in terms of,
are you thinking something that Dawn Aerospace does? Because
not Dawn Aerospace,
they do some interesting. Their revenue at the moment has got nothing to do with launch, although we've seen all around their space planes, and that looks cool and shiny, right? So
it's the one Peter Crabtree was involved with. So they in terms of like total addressable market for space, there's a huge amount that we can still be doing.
Lots of opportunity. He's involved in Zeno, but they're up here.
Oh, Zeno, are they up here? Are they? For some reason, I thought they were in Christchurch.
So. Yep. We're speaking about lots of companies today who we've had on the on the podcast. So we've had an episode where we've spoken to Max from Zeno, and of course we've had Peter Beck and many of the others. Right. Sorry. Back to our other topics. I'm just thinking what we can squeeze in. Cloudflare have made a really interesting maneuver.
Clever.
Now there's been a lot of debate around who should have access to what content, and should AI companies be allowed to scrape your website of your data and then use it to train themselves up to have access to all the latest news, whatever it is that they do with info, which obviously varies in different situations. And in fact, I think if I recall correctly, there was an interview with someone senior at Google. And I'm just saying that because I can't remember exactly who it was, but whether it was one of the founders or it might have been the CEO or Alphabet CEO possibly, and there was a sort of discussion around the distaste for YouTube having been sort of scraped of all sorts of visuals for OpenAI to produce Sora, which makes videos, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is the same company that scrapes the whole internet for just about every aspect of their business, including their AI. So anyway, onto Cloudflare's AI blocker. So they've had this capability for a while. Now they're moving to a sort of a default option whereby if you don't change it and you've got Cloudflare protecting your website, as it were, if you've got that subscription with them, and I think this probably covers their free tier as well. You now get that option to say you want to block the AI crawlers. So when OpenAI or whoever comes after your information comes for it, they don't get access unless you've said yes. I think this is a very, very smart move on the part of Cloudflare.
If it works, it's brilliant. It's super clever because it's what people want. They want to be sure that what they're producing isn't going to be ingested into just some mass thing that's going to regurgitate it in a different way. I've started putting in contracts of people that I do copywriting for. This is not allowed to be ingested into an LLM, or used to train an LLM to produce work, because you want to protect your own intellectual property. And this is a to and fro of technology that goes right back to the Napster days, right? Like where technology was used to kind of infringe, and still is, I guess, with pirating, used to infringe on intellectual property, but magnitudes wider and affecting so many more people. And in this new age of the internet where everything is kind of accessible, and as happens over time, then we get technology that develops to prevent that, or to commoditize it, because I think Cloudflare also says you can have people pay for access to your content. So the New York Times could, I think they've made a deal with, or are making a deal or something like that with OpenAI to offer content. So now you can do that more easily with Cloudflare. So it's a natural extension of this technology. I think it's really interesting. I just hope it works.
Well, I think that there is a counterpoint to this, because we're all used to what generative AI can achieve for us when it has largely free and unfettered access to everything. So now we're flipping it over from, Ben as the content producer, Paul as the podcast host that doesn't want there to be an AI version of himself, out there without authorization, or however you want to put it. Now, as users of the technology, when we go and we say, "Hey, Paul, tell me what's the latest on this topic or that topic," or "Hey, write me a highlight of this, research XYZ," all the different things that we do. How does that play out if actually most of the new information coming onto the internet by default is blocked and it's not accessible? Do we end up with a version of generative AI that is crippled and unable to be useful? Do we need some sort of in between point? Or is it around the licensing piece? Is it that you do have a mechanism that, say, Cloudflare can police and offer, and they open up the door based on certain terms to certain entities? How do you think that needs to play out to kind of work well for everyone?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would ask you: did paywalls kill the internet? Not really. The people,
but they're not on by default, right? Whereas this, if you're with Cloudflare anyway, potentially is suddenly on. So if the whole internet moved to paywalls overnight, that actually would be a very different internet than what we're used to today.
But if you have an LLM that is able to see what is publicly available, so headline, topic, sentence, those kinds of things. And
no, that's all blocked.
It's not, though, because that's what I'm saying. Those things will still be open. And so if the LLM can then go, you say, what's the latest? And it can go, well, this is what I know, but this seems like it might be an interesting development. Do you want to pay for access? Or do you want to go to this website and see it for yourself? You can go there and, so that doesn't have to be a one, or it doesn't have to be like it doesn't have to be that you have to give it unfettered access and train on all your data just so you can be included, and also who benefits from the AI being trained on everything? Maybe the end user a little bit, but mainly the companies that are charging people for access to them. But the content producers are not benefiting. If we eliminate content producers, if we have no reason for people to produce content, we then also lose,
of course,
good generative AI, right? Or,
agreed. Yeah.
So I think that there does need to be a middle ground, because otherwise, what are we? There's that famous Winston Churchill misquote where it's like, we need to cut the arts to fund the war, and then apocryphal, it's not true. Winston Churchill says, then what are we fighting for? right? And it feels like a similar thing where it's like, oh, we need to allow people to train on your content so that we can give it to people. It's like, well, then what are we giving them? So,
All right, yeah, good answer. Good answer. It's good. It's got to play the devil's advocate and get the different perspectives here. Now, in this AI sort of world, the European Union has introduced their sort of AI code mandating transparency from a copyright perspective. So their regulation is requiring tech companies, developers to disclose the sources of their training data and ensure fair use of copyright content. So, aiming to find an appropriate balance when it comes to intellectual property rights versus innovation, and making that something that works fairly. That seems like a pretty encouraging move, doesn't it?
I think it's really encouraging. We have in the US an unfettered system with very, very low levels of regulation, or at least enforced regulation. And we're seeing, all of these issues that are cropping up. And so if the EU can come in and say, look, well, despite what you're saying, technology companies, we were still going to do this because we need to do something. So, like you're always saying, let's try it out and see if it works. And if it doesn't, then we can tweak. But just sitting there and doing nothing, I guess in one way saying we're going to take a light touch regulation approach sometimes isn't the way to go. You actually need to think about it. And as we saw with privacy, when the EU made rules around data protection, those rippled out across the world. And the EU's data protection standards became the gold standard for the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And so if they can do something like that for artificial intelligence as well, or for generative artificial intelligence, that could potentially raise all boats and give us a much healthier and more careful and safer AI ecosystem.
Yep. Yeah, it's good. It's good to see these things getting figured out, and to see governments that are able to take leadership and steer things in a good direction. That said, governments will always get a lot of stuff wrong. So, so we need to follow what actually plays out well and what doesn't. Now, on the government front, China have a centralized internet ID system. It's coming through. I just was reading some information about it out of the US from the Library of Congress, actually. Not quite sure how we stumbled upon this one, but I guess it's not secret stuff, but it's interesting to see the way that different countries are approaching authentication and being able to deliver the right, I guess, well, what different regions feel, or different governments feel, is the appropriate way to authenticate users, to check things like ages and the like. And so with their centralized ID system is meant to confirm people's real names and details, but without providing to, say, the website owner or the social media platform or whatever it is, all of that personal information. So, the government is kind of doing that that piece. And so, interesting to see that that China are taking a lead on this front. Now, I think we can probably join up the dots as to why China might lead on these sorts of things because of the Chinese Communist Party and their approach to things. They probably quite like to know everything that's going on their internet. Their internet is more locked down than just about anywhere else in the world. And in fact, the Great Firewall of China and the mechanisms that they've built, they offer that to other governments to use as well. I think we've seen, the likes of Myanmar and so on that are following in those footsteps. But interestingly, we will see the sorts of things that they're doing take more of a global relevance as countries try and tackle the issues of, for instance, what Australia have done, which have said, hey, if you're under 16, we're going to, basically block your access to, social media.
Some social media.
And at this stage, YouTube is on the cards for, I think there's been a bunch of debate around that, where, we're going to block, YouTube for youngsters and so on. And so as these things come in, whether it's at an individual, a local sort of state level or at a national level, and of course these things are being bounced around for New Zealand as well, then, well, how do you do that? Well, either people provide a level of proof back to an untrustworthy, corporate organization or entity like a Meta or a, what have you, or you get some sort of mechanism like this with possibly a more trustworthy party. I guess that's part of the debate, right? Is the government the right entity to do that? Should there be some sort of blockchain mechanism to do it? Should we be doing these sorts of things at all? And of course, for ever since the internet's been a thing with a level of uptake, there have been debates around privacy and so on. What were your thoughts on this one, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, digital identity is nothing new, and governments all around the world, including our own, working on it. One approach is to have authorized authorizers, basically, where you have could be a telco, where you say that, so many people have information with telco, so we're going to empower you to be able to confirm that their digital ID is them. Kind of have it a little bit with Realme, that's what it was aiming to be, never quite panned out. So there's a lot of approaches across the world, and it kind of makes sense that China was able to do it first because they have a very closed ecosystem when it comes to citizen identity and internet and those kinds of things. So I think a lot of people across the world will be looking at that system and trying to see what they can learn for their own digital identity systems.
Yeah, look, it's such a fascinating area, and I think I do hear a range of responses from people when it comes to these sorts of mechanisms, and the digital ID term definitely gets some people's sort of backs up. But I think on the flip side, when you look at it, you can see there's some really, really good benefits, and the same as just about everything you look at. You bring a kind of a technological and a digital element to things, and often they get better. But I guess there's that debate of well, do they?
How do you integrate digital identity at a governmental level with personal data sovereignty, ownership of your own data, being able to manage it and choose when to share it, when not to share it, how to share it safely? It's a huge, massive conversation that's wrapped up in a lot of issues. And, also if it should be opt-in, people can choose not to, but then how do you actually offer alternatives for people who aren't using it and maintain those? So it gets very complicated. I think it's inevitable personally. It's the modern world is digital, and so much happens in the digital world. Just would be, it's always good to make sure that we are doing it with care and bringing along everybody, and then letting people who just are not interested have their own way of doing things as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's us out of time. Great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me,
Ben. We've got a couple of topics we're going to have to save up. I think till another episode. So I'll be a little bit in trouble there. I don't know whether the live stream exactly highlighted those for those catching the live stream, but apologies. We will pick those up on a future episode. We've got some gadgets to talk about as well in there. But yeah, that's us for this episode. So thanks everybody for listening in. And of course, a big thank you to Workday, 1NZ, Spark, 2 Degrees, HP, and Gorilla Technology. All right. Thanks, everyone. We will catch you on the next episode next week. And thank you, Ben, for joining the show.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Cheers.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast. Broadology, proactive, strategic IT.